Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much to the organisers for inviting me back again. Just in case I don't actually get through to the end, I thought I'd start with the conclusions. The developments in the UK beef industry is industry-focused. Okay, it's been driven by abattoirs and some breed societies. There are breed societies in the UK that are very, very keen on making the transition from being just a breed society into more of a breeding organisation. The one that we work with is the Limousin's, and I think certainly in the UK, the Limousin breed is the one that's making all the movements at the moment. The current situation in the UK is that profitability is very, very low in the beef world. Some of the work that you'll be hearing about shows that age at slaughter is a source of huge losses. The speed with which you can get animals from a calf to slaughter is of the essence in terms of controlling profitability, and I'll keep touching on that all the way through. We tend to work in large data sets because we use field data, industry data from abattoirs, so therefore quality of individual records becomes less of an issue when you've got 1.5 or 2 or 4 million of them. And carcass trait data is the one that we're currently exploiting in genomics in the Limousin breed. Now, feed efficiency is, again, another trait that keeps popping up all the time. It's popped up here a few times, and we're looking at it from a number of different angles, and I'll try to explain as we go through the angles that we're taking for feed efficiency in both dairy and in beef, because, as you'll see, a lot of beef in the UK comes from the dairy herd, so we have an interest in feed efficiency in dairy cows for dairy milk production, but also with regards to supply of beef to the beef industry. We're measuring feed intake in dairy and in beef on what we call phenotype farms. And I'll show you some examples there where we've contracted commercial beef producers to record feed intake on behalf of the industry under contract as a way of gathering these rare and expensive phenotypes. We're also working very hard on predicting feed intake or energy intake from milk mid-infrared. So it's a very promising source of phenotypes, or as I prefer to call them, phenotypes, because actually the milk recording is already done, the mere is already collected, and we're creating new phenotypes for free. And they actually happen to be very good phenotypes, and I'll touch on that. We're also involved in the international activity on genomics for DMI, and I think you are as well. And this is where organisations all around the world have pooled their genotypes and phenotypes in order to create an international genomic selection panel. And again, we're utilising that to see how we can put all this together to improve feed efficiency. And finally, we're doing our best to get into meat quality. We don't have any kind of organised measurement scheme for meat quality in the UK or any kind of payment scheme, but I'm working very closely with the UK's largest meat processor to work out how we might do that. Now, one of the things that we work very hard on in the UK, particularly in my group, is making sure that there's a tight integration between the national genetic and genomic evaluations and the research that serves that. I think it works very, very well in the UK, this tight integration. We have researchers who have very close interaction with genetic evaluations, and we have people working in genetic evaluations who have very close associations with people doing the research. So there's almost a seamless flow of research into practice, and we often find that some of the results of a research project actually get applied by the industry before the end of the research project. So it's a very rapid integration and uptake. So why do we do it? Well, here's some examples. This is one of the examples I use to demonstrate why genomics in the UK has taken off so quickly. And you can see the kind of lines on the left. You can see the blue line at the bottom. These are trends in the past. The pale blue line is the trend in sort of overall genetic merit. And you can see when it changes from blue to kind of red, that's when we introduced genomics in dairy. So the rate of improvement is increased basically as a result of being able to identify genomically improved sires. And you can see from the line below that, the kind of rather wavy line, that's the proportion or the number of inseminations by young bulls. So prior to genomics, young bull inseminations were sort of down at 20% level, typical of a progeny testing scheme. As soon as we introduced genomics, the young bull inseminations has rocketed and shows no real sign of slowing down. We're currently at well over 60%. One of my interests is how to get the beef and sheep industries to do the same. If we're to exploit genomics, we need phenotypes. But basically this says if you're to exploit genomics and make good use of it, actually phenotypes is a thing that you need to be concentrating on. You need to get the phenotypes as fast as you can, as many of them as you can, and use every available resource to get your phenotypes together to enable you to exploit genomics. So moving on then a little bit now to the UK industry, and again you saw this last time, those of you that were here, and it basically shows about 50% of all the beef in the UK originates from the dairy herd. And you can see on the left hand side you've got male Holstein calves that go directly out of the dairy herd into the beef industry. You've got slaughter cows that go into the beef industry. You've then got beef cross dairy that go directly out into the beef industry. You've then got on the right-hand side, the suckler herd, which is predominantly kind of half beef, half dairy. So you've got dairy genes in the suckler herd, which are then mated to a beef bull to produce a beef cross dairy type beef calf that goes into the beef chain. So the dairy industry is a very important part of the UK beef supply chain. Now, when we look at who are the dams of the beef calves or the beef animals going into the beef chain, you can see on the left-hand side of the table, when we look at the national herd, the most common dam of a beef carcass is the Holstein. And in here you can see it's about 46%. The second most common is a Limousin. And the Angus is sort of way down there. So again, just emphasising the fact that there's a very tight link between dairy and beef in the UK. So going back again to this phenotype question. Well, in the UK we have, in the middle there, you can see it, the British Cattle Movement Service. This was something that was constructed about 20 years ago as a result of BSE. And every animal in the country, by law, has to be registered in the database. All of its movements have to be registered, and ultimately when it's slaughtered it has to be registered. So we have a very good national record of all cattle births, deaths and marriages and movements. So what we've done is take other databases of data, so milk recording databases, and now we have data from the abattoirs. I can't tell you exactly, but it's millions. We've got about 50% of the UK kill data. And what we can do is we can put that all together to produce a sort of national database of all the beef cattle, or a sizable chunk of it, that we can then use to do some analyses and genetic evaluations and so on. And the one I draw your attention to is on the left-hand side, a project that I mentioned last time I was here, which has now gone live, where we get VIA, video image analysis records on tens of thousands of cattle slaughtered. They come automatically every single week, by a Dropbox account, straight into the process, straight into the evaluations, and we're now producing breeding values for carcass characteristics. This is the primal, so strip loin, round, all the different pieces of the carcass. So Limousin breeders can not only select for kind of carcass traits, they can actually change the shape of their animals. And the one thing in particular that they're interested in is the strip loin. So effectively they're trying to create a Limousin or limo that's stretched. Okay? Feel free to use that one yourself on other occasion. I paused for laughter, it came eventually. So. The various parts of the carcass are very heritable. You can actually change the shape of a carcass really relatively simply if you've got large numbers of phenotypes. And this is a graph I showed you last time, which basically shows why we do it. If you forget the one on the left-hand side, to look at the middle bit there, that shows you that as carcasses get bigger, they're worth more. Okay, that's not surprising. The retail value is on the left-hand side and the carcass weight is along the bottom. But of course, what we're interested in is the spread there. So that little bit in the middle that's bounded by the red arrow, that's on the right-hand side. And what it shows you is that for a given carcass weight of, 350 or so kilograms, when you chop the carcass up into all its various components and weight it by its retail value, the worst animals and the best animals differ by about 100 pounds. So I guess that's about $150 to $180 or something like that. So that's money that's available to the farmer and the abattoir. The other way of looking at it is that really what you would want is all of your animals at the bottom to be at the top, so that for a given weight, the retail value of the carcass is maximised. And that's what the Limousin breeders are aiming to do now. They have a system, it's called GeneSure, the company, and then once the animals have been genotyped, those come through to us automatically, and we produce genomic breeding values, which are then published on the website. And here you can see what it looks like. These are for a particular bull, it's been greyed out. The blue bar is where the bull's name is. And you can see that, the breeders can go in and they can see the different traits. So for I can't read them here, I don't have my glasses, but you can see the the one at the bottom is retail value. So they can start selecting animals on retail value. This is actually happening live now in the UK. So the implications of that are that there's a large benefit to the industry. Large numbers of records are now used for the genomic evaluations of economically important traits. And the records are in probably in the hundreds of thousands, not the hundreds. In the past, the genetic evaluation was based on those herds that Performance recorded. And the numbers of records involved would have been a few hundred farms and a few thousands of records. So the entire UK genetic evaluation process was driven by those few farmers who Performance recorded. And we've tipped it on its head now, and we utilise these abattoir records in preference. The other important part of it is that the traits themselves are not proxies. They're not something that we measure in order to predict something else. They're the actual traits that farmers get paid for. So they're now able to select for kilograms of strip loin or kilograms of something else or value of carcass. They're not selecting for something that is related in some way to the thing of interest. One of the other things that's happened as a result of this is that there are now stronger links in the supply chain. So the Breed Society has spent the last 4 years meeting regularly with the processor, and that activity itself is beneficial, that each side becomes more aware of how things work on the other side, and you end up with much better signalling between the different parts of the supply chain. Obviously, increased efficiency means reduced greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram of product, kind of a byproduct of this process at the moment, because in the UK we're not paid on greenhouse gas emissions, but all of the industries are starting to try and gear up to enable them to deal with it. These are the first EBVs of their kind in the UK, certainly the first genomic breeding values for beef in the UK, routinely used. And of course, again, there was a great deal of discussion on how to make these values available to the industry, but it was a nice conversation to be having. We were sort of arguing about how we should make something really good available to all the farmers to use. And I'd much rather be engaged in that kind of conversation than a conversation saying that genomics doesn't work or EBVs don't work and we don't need them. The conclusions to the first part is that we've developed a platform to enable us to do genomic evaluations of economically important traits. And that gives us a platform now to move on to consider other things. And the things that we're considering now very strongly is feed efficiency, which I'm going to come on to, female fertility traits and meat quality.